Hey guys, this is a bit of a random video, but due to the fact of Micro Machiens World Series being released, and to tie in slightly with my Feeling Nostalgic series, I thought I would do a video on the history of the Micro Machiens game series. I have played most of these through my childhood, and loved, again, most of them, even though they are just simple top-down races. The concept of different vehicles racing around the breakfast table, the pool table, or even in the garden was just so fun, and the fact that you can get different weapons to kill your enemies in the later games just adds to the icing on the cake. Let's take a look at where it all started. First up, we have the first game to be released, and that is Micro Machiens back in 1991, originally published for the Nintendo Entertainment System, but over the years has been released on all sorts of different platforms. The idea for this game was created because the toy company Galoob wanted Codemasters to create a game based on their brand of toys. Fun fact number 1. Galoob has the franchise license to many toys that you've probably heard of but didn't know who did them. For example, the Spice Girls dolls, I bet you didn't think you'd be hearing any references of them today, and different cartoon and movie franchises like Ghostbusters and Biker Mice from Mars, which I had toys from both of when I was younger. Oh, memories. Fun fact number 2, coming right at you after the first, is that Codemasters and Galoob, since we are briefly on the subject of them, are the ones that brought us all Game Genie, a device that modifies game data, allowing the player to change different aspects of the game to make it so they couldn't die, had unlimited ammo, that sort of thing. But I digress. Considering the first game was created in 1991 and games are still being released, although not for a long time, makes me think that this is a game series that will keep on coming. There are 2 game modes in this game, Challenge, which is a single player, and 2-player mode, where you can take on one of your friends and see who's better. In the Challenge game mode, the aim of the game is to win as many races as possible to avoid being knocked out of the competition, and to knock out every other racer in the lineup. You get to select who you want to race against, and once people start getting knocked out, you choose who replaces them, and you have to knock them out. And so on, so forth. If you win so many games in a row, you get the chance to take on a bonus level, which is a time trial, completing the course within a set amount of time. Each time you move on to the next race, you unlock a vehicle to put into your Micro Machiens holder, and if you make it to the end, your holder will be full. But I didn't play it all the way through, as after a while the emulation glitches started to hurt my eyes, but I'm sure you can imagine what it looks like when it's full. This is probably the one that I spent the most time on, and if not, it is definitely a close second. Released 3 years after its predecessor, this game first came out on the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis in November 1994 in the EU and was released on other consoles over time, including a new version of the game called Micro Machiens Turbo Tournament 96, which was only released in PAL regions and featured new tracks and a track construction kit. Being 3 years later and on different systems, of course you can expect the graphics and the gameplay to be improved, adding a huge focus on the physics of the vehicles, so you'd need to use different handling techniques for different vehicles, for example the hovercrafts and helicopters. New game modes were added to the game, allowing players to have tournaments, head-to-head races where you need to drive fast enough so your opponent goes off the screen, and time trials instead of only being able to compete in a challenge mode. Question time! The amount of people that could play this game has increased since the release of the original game. What is the amount of people that you can play with in this game at any one time? I'll give you a few seconds to think of the answer to this one. 8. That's right, although the game cartridge allowed you to plug in 2 extra controllers so 4 people could play, the total amount of players that you could play with at any one time is 8, as 2 people could share 1 controller and you could have 4 controllers plugged in. In the party play option, there is a mode called 8-player share, where all you need to do to control the car is to steer and brake. The game would automatically accelerate for you. 8-player games nowadays don't really seem like such an odd concept, but back then is a different story. The gameplay and the characters in Micro Machiens 2 are relatively the same as the first, although it's time for another fun fact. TV presenter Violet Berlin can be found in this game as a playable character. For those of you who don't know who she is, I'm going to pull this straight from her wiki page. She is best known for co-presenting Bad Influence between 1992 and 1996, a video gaming series with Andy Crane on terrestrial TV channel ITV at a time where Mega Drive, SNES, and Game Boy products dominated the market. I hope I've just taught you something. I've never played this game, and I don't even think I realised that it existed until I started making this video and looking into the history of Micro Machiens. This was only released in PAL regions for the Sega Mega Drive and features new tracks and military vehicles, as you'd expect from a name like that. This is the first Micro Machines game that has vehicles with weapons, so you can attack the other racers to try and give you the advantage, although it doesn't always work out that way, as shooting the weapon knocks your vehicle back a bit, causing you to slow down. All the familiar characters are here, including Violet Berlin, all of them garbed in military clothing and ready for action. You have your standard race and time trial modes, standard but with the addition of heavy weaponry, but this game introduces a new game mode called Battle Arena. The aim of this mode is to survive 30 seconds while a different amount of opponents are trying to knock you off, either by ramming you or with their guns. You can knock them off, but they will respawn. It does give you a break for a few seconds of not having to worry about anyone trying to kill you, but they do come back, and sometimes with a vengeance. Remember when I said that Micro Machines 2 was probably the one that I spent most of the time playing? Well, Micro Machines V3 is the other contender in that competition. Released in 1997 for the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo Game Boy, which I didn't realise, and the PC, the way the game looks has been completely overhauled in this newer version of the game. Everything has turned 3D. The cars, the tracks, even the characters that you used to play. I remember always choosing Spider no matter what version of the game I was playing. The whole game has been updated for the newer systems, and they even give the characters voices. Every change to this game was an attempt to make it the fun, silly game that it is meant to be, and in my opinion it worked very well. The music is very jolly, the cars do a victory dance when you win the race, they add power-ups to the races now that you can pick up to try and give you an advantage like Mario Kart. Even the sounds when your car jumps from somewhere or falls from a high place add humour to the game, especially when you fall off the side of the track and hold down the horn button for comedic effect. The game is still top down, but the camera moves around to try and give you the best angle so you can tell where you're going. Kind of. Disclaimer, after playing this game again for this video and recording purposes, I've changed my mind about the camera moving to help you. I got so trolled on the last race that I played that I kept falling off everything since I couldn't see what was coming. Stupid f***ing camera. There isn't really much new I can say about this game, as the game modes are the same and the gameplay is essentially the same as well, but there are a few things about this that I like. The start menu of the game is so different. It isn't just a normal menu that you just select what you want and away you go. They change it up so when you select an option, your car drives into the garage of that option and you make your way down different roads, selecting what you want. I thought that was pretty cool when I was younger. There's a driving school that you can use and play. I remember trying to complete this and failing massively when I first tried it. You have to follow different instructions to pass and drive in between different objects. If you aren't a patient person and you have a short fuse, I can see you exploding at this if you fuck up. I always loved how it would count down on the loading screens, but then just put up another please wait screen. Very minor, but it used to make me chuckle. The loading screen for the races was unlike anything I had ever seen before, as you could randomly drive around a tiny square area using the horn of the vehicle and jumping around. If you're playing single player, all you can do is make the computer players wait, and they're not really going to care since they aren't real, but if you were playing with some of your friends in the same room, you could just keep driving around and jumping around until you annoyed them. I don't know why you would want to do this, but you would have the chance to be a very early troll in gaming. What do you think of when you think of Micro Machines? Do you think that we're all about vehicles? Do you think you'll be able to use the same old characters that you know and love and you grew up with through every other game in the series? Do you think about human experimentation? No? Well, this game intro has raised a lot of questions to me, I don't mind telling you, since all you see is someone being created in a lab and then dressed. This game was released on the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo Game Boy Color, and is considered by some to pretty much be a spin-off of the original series instead of a sequel. As instead of driving, your characters are running. That's right, you control characters that are running to win the races, but in some circumstances vehicles like skateboards and bees are used. Looking at some of the information for this game, there is actually quite a lot of backstory that I never would have associated with a Micro Machines game. They're usually a turn up, race, try to win, that kind of thing, but this game is apparently set in a time where the world's resources are almost depleted and the world is in peril. A scientist has come up with a plan to shrink and create super soldiers to try and save the world. So he hires 12 volunteers, which are the characters that you race with, kind of explains the intro video now, and conducts experiments on them. Some of the experiments being the different racetracks to see which one would be good as a super soldier. Yeah. The characters that you can control have different abilities, giving each a different way to play, and they all have backstories. The game modes are the same as the other Micro Machines games, with the addition of training, which will be similar to the Micro Machines V3 driving school, and bonus tracks, which are mazes that your character is put into to collect 30 power-ups within the time limit. These bonus tracks can only be accessed if you win 3 games in a row in the different game modes. The tracks are just like you're used to, full of random stuff to get in your way and make the race as awkward as possible, but in this game there are things that can kill you. While you're running around certain tracks, you'll often come across some sort of saw or a knife, and if you run into it, you decapitate yourself, slowing you down as you have to wait to respawn. And again, the camera in this game is just out to troll you. Six years after the oddity that was Micro Maniacs, Micro Machines V4 graced us with its appearance on screen. A direct sequel to V3, it has over 25 tracks, a whopping 750 vehicles, and a track editor in certain versions of the game. Sorry PSP and DS. It goes back to how Micro Machines games should be, racing in tiny toy vehicles instead of being a lab rat to a crazy scientist. This game did receive mixed reviews, getting only 5s and 6s out of 10s in reviews, but some people out there believe this is the best version of the game to come out since the first game on the NES. This was released 9 years after its prequel with much better graphics and controls, but does it have the same feel and bring the same joy? In my opinion, being such a huge fan of the Micro Machines series of games, apart from Micro Maniacs, no, this isn't as good as Micro Machines V3 or anywhere near it in my opinion. Maybe I was just expecting more from this game, but the fact that there only seems to be a point-based system rather than a proper race system for single player just seems strange to me. It was fun, but whoever was in front at a certain point in the match won, as the other cars would just stop going as fast. There were times that I was racing against the computer and it seemed to just intentionally slow down. What's the point of that? The weapons are fun and the gameplay is smooth enough and the graphics are good, but it's the gameplay itself that puts me off this one. I must have forgotten his existence until today, because whenever I think of Micro Machines I think of Turbo Tournament and V3. One of the saving graces for this game is that the camera actually seems like it's trying to be useful in this version of the game, but I suppose that's just because out of all of them, this is the least top-down Micro Machines game I think I've seen, in terms of camera angle, but I might be wrong. 11 years has passed since the release of the last Micro Machines game. Maybe people thought that was it for the series, the saga had ended. After the travesty, in my and lots of other people's opinions, which was V4, maybe that's it, they're done, game over man, game over. No, as in summer of 2017, a new contender was released. Micro Machines World Series, 11 years after its predecessor and 26 years after the release of the original game. 26 years. That's more than a whole female generation, according to a website I saw online. I hadn't seen anything to do with this game until its release, no videos, no gameplay, nothing. So this is completely fresh to me and I'm going to go in with an open mind because I know how good and how bad games in this series can be, so let's dive right in, shall we? The game modes and the way the game is laid out reminds me very much of Overwatch. You choose the game mode you want and wait to be put into a game, as well as the loot box system which seems to be popping up in every game nowadays. I didn't want to compare the other games to this one by playing online with different people, so I went straight to the custom game mode and put myself in a game with some AI, just like it used to be. The controls are very, very smooth, the graphics are amazing, and the gameplay is fun and hectic. Since I was playing with AI, there was no doing things just to annoy other people, or people ganging up on everyone. It was just a standard race like it would have been back in previous versions of the game. If you were looking for something that is like Micro Machines V3, then this isn't the game for you, as it is very online multiplayer focused and there isn't a single player tournament mode, much to my disappointment. But you could always try to do your own by using custom games. I won't go into any of the online gameplay here since in my opinion that isn't what a Micro Machines game should be about, but there may be some in future on this channel about the different online game modes and different gameplay videos. This is still a great looking and feeling game for anyone wanting to get some online action, not in that way, and have a new game from an old series to play. That's all from me, guys and girls. I hope you've enjoyed this. I know it's a bit random, but hopefully I have taught you a thing or two today. I am Chris Cross, I am going now, I will see you soon.